All right, passenger number 2, why don't you introduce yourselves for us?
Hi, I'm Shannon Lietz from Intuit, and I run the red team.
All right, now, first things first. Now, Justin Harvey, we just spoke with him, and now he just ditched us, actually, okay?
He totally ran off.
Totally ran off, hopped off the trolley. He did at least wait for it to stop. But you know each other. We had a surprise reunion here, actually, which was kind of a surprise. All of a sudden, you hugged, and I was like, what's going on? So how do you know each other?
So Justin and I have known each other for about 10 years, and we met when I was at Sony PlayStation. And he is one of my favorite people, helped me to clean up the Sony PlayStation breach in 2011.
Oh, okay, very good, very good.
We go a long way back.
Now, I want to start by asking you a little bit about, you have a presentation coming up at RSA this year. The presentation, why doesn't the security industry have a Mary Meeker-style report? Now, the Mary Meeker report is an annual report for tech investors and looks at major internet trends. So explain the version of this type of report that you wanted to do for the cyber industry and, basically what action you took.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was inspired by Mary Meeker. If you're not familiar with her work, every year she posts up an internet trends report, and it's 300 slides. It's amazing. It totally takes all of this information and sifts it and boils it down. It becomes super useful, and I thought it was really intriguing to see what we could do about trying to make cybersecurity a little bit more digestible. So I took on this task of basically boiling down the security industry into one report called the Security Practitioners Annual Report. And I've looked at 5,000 companies, 300 reports, basically nights and weekends, and spent most of my research time trying to figure out how to boil down the security industry. And I've found a lot of really unique things.
All right, so tell me about some of those unique things.
Yeah, so one of the best reports I read last year was the McKinsey report that they have for their annual threat report. It's amazing. It actually did a really great job of helping to understand how to boil down some of the harder things in the cybersecurity industry. And I went into it thinking it was going to be not as appealing to me because I'm actually in the red team space. So I thought, oh, this is like one of those dry, boring things. And it actually turned out to be an amazing report. Another thing that I learned was in terms of the reportings, the reports were coming out were that they basically had a lot of information that wasn't even jiving. So from one threat report to another, all of the metrics were sort of like haphazard. There wasn't any real standards associated with the metrics. So you could be looking at a metric that was about endpoint security and trying to compare it to somebody else's endpoint security metric. And because they don't actually jive, you end up with a lot of information that basically you have a hard time sifting through. Another really keen thing was that more than 50% of the information that was in there was so hard to decipher that it didn't become useful. And so sifting it out became really fast. Of the 300 reports, it turns out that most of them are endpoint and threat reports.
This might be a to be continued. Yes, okay, to be continued. All right, I'm back with Shannon Lietz from Intuit, the tax preparation software company, and we're facing the other direction now. We had to hop off and hop back on again. So where we left off, talking a little bit about some of the threats that are on your radar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so from an adversary management perspective, I'm constantly looking at all of the threats that come in through my team. A few of the ones that have been on my radar, I've actually talked about at RSA in the past. A lot of the OWASP top 10. And a couple of the ones that have really struck lately have been around subdomain takeovers. If you've been anybody and not under a rock, you've seen subdomain takeovers really take off in, say, the bug bounties. And I think it's a big deal. As well as sort of looking at the cloud for S3 buckets and cloud buckets that are open. That's such a big deal for companies that have sensitive data that are worried about it.
All right, so we talked a little bit about blue team threat intelligence. Now let's go from blue team to red team. So you've built a red team at Intuit, and I understand that you actually have, you try to instill a sense of think like the adversary, think like the bad guy. How do you do that? How do you get in that kind of a mindset?
Yeah, one of the things that we do is we spend a lot of time trying to gamify and increasing people's understanding of what it takes to kind of cheat. putting that into their perspective it's not too difficult, because what you really want to do is have them think about things like edge cases. Everybody's really always thinking about customer cases and use cases, but the adversary is thinking about how they use your software in a different way. They're thinking about how they can do something that you didn't expect. They're thinking about what mistakes do you make, and so planting that in somebody's head is it's different. And I think that you find creatives and they really take to it. People that are super passionate about it, they don't really have any trouble with it.
Yeah, and the other interesting thing is that in terms of recruiting a red team, you have a little bit of a philosophy on where to bring people in from. As we know, there is a cyber skills gap. It's very hard recruiting and filling employment positions. So you have to be a little bit creative, and you are in terms of filling out your team. So explain about that a little bit.
Yeah, I'm very creative when it comes to looking at people and their backgrounds. My background is biomechanics, and if you look at what I know how to do, it's because I'm creative and capable of pulling together what is an adversary really looking at. My team is made out from previous interns. We've done things like boot camps where we've brought people to the technology and seen what they're capable of. So you can kind of try it out a little bit. And in the boot camps, we do things like with Hacker Girl as an example, we have Ponagachis that we've been using to teach women how to hack. Very interesting technology. And that has allowed us to do a lot more with the different types of technical talent that's out there. Looking at the DevSecOps capabilities, having somebody who has development talent, who wants to go to the next level. I had an amazing person I worked with back at Sony who helped build Java deserialization, and he was a developer first before he became a security technologist. And now I don't think he'll ever go back. But I think that we probably think too hard about what people need to be doing from a security perspective, and then we miss all of this wonderful, amazing talent. So from my perspective, interns that come in, the first thing we try to have them do, knock down a bunch of 0 days, figuring out what they could do from the standpoint of getting a shell and trying to, essentially build logical hacks and make it so that they realize it's actually not as difficult as they thought.
One of the key questions that you ask prospective recruits or employees is, tell me a story, tell me something that you're passionate about. Explain a little bit your philosophy behind why that's such an important question for you as you're building a team.
Yeah, it's interesting. You can hire for a lot of different things, and people tend to hire for skills, and they tend to hire for, personality and things like that. I tend to hire for passion because it's the one thing that you can't actually create. If somebody's not passionate about something, you're not going to immediately get them to be passionate just simply by plopping them into the middle of a job. You have to start with that. And so somebody who can tell you a really interesting story and who's passionate about solving problems, it comes out in their story. So the one question I always ask is, what are you passionate about? And somebody who's truly passionate about cybersecurity, they may have read books, they might have actually watched a bunch of blogs. They tell you a lot of interesting details that they wouldn't normally have if they weren't passionate about it. So it's a great way of sifting through and finding the people who really want to be there.
I'm going to flip the script on you and ask you that question. All right, tell me a story you're passionate about. I got to be off topic, though.
Yeah. So you want something that's not about security. So what am I passionate about? I absolutely love to cook. I would say that hacking can be in any type of medium. And so one of the things that I always look for in different kinds of creative cooking is, what do you want to do and how do you cheat your recipes? So as an example, I like to make peanut butter garlic bread, and I like to make ceviche enchiladas. And, so some of those really unique talents come out, and just how you think about everything that you do. Cooking doesn't have to be boring, and I think that, if you're willing to try something, that can be amazing. And so for me, every bit of hacking is everything that I do, no matter what medium it is.
Well, great. Thanks so much, Sharon. I appreciate you joining us. We're moving again, which is good. And great. We're going to bring on our next passenger now.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me here.
All right. My pleasure.